Google right now the top 20 wealthiest people in the world. Every single one of them will be in business. None of them are in real estate. None of them will be in FX, dropshipping, any of that. Every single person will be in business and M&A. If you had said to me four or 5 years ago, can someone with no experience in business, have no idea, come from, I don't know, working in Sainsbury's, because I'm using that as an example because one of our guys was working in Sainsbury's and went and bought a company. Write down all the names of the people you believe have enough money to invest or some surplus cash that they could invest. I was like, there's not a chance that I'm bringing any of those people. That failure there, that cut me because I felt like I put everything into that. Don't be scared of risk. I think that if you don't take risks, you'll without a doubt pick up the tab later on in life.
What would you say to people that say that you are essentially stealing from old people?
Well,
my very special guest today is Dee Ludlow, a self-taught deal maker and investor who's overseen over $100 million in acquisitions across the UK, US, and UAE. He's the founder of 5D Capital Partners, a private investment firm focused on off-market M&A. He's an acquisition architect who believes that organic growth is a trap and that you shouldn't spend a decade building a business when you can buy one in 90 to 180 days.
Yeah.
So Dee, very, very special welcome to you.
I appreciate the invite.
No, thank you very much. I usually find it more polite to let my guests introduce themselves. So how would you introduce yourself?
I hate intros, but you did a pretty good job. I think for me, I would just say that I'm still an aspiring entrepreneur. I've lived through experiences, ups and downs, which has brought me here. But yeah, pretty much everything you just said.
Okay.
I think you did a good job.
Thank you. So there's a story that you often tell about a guy telling you to get some hair on your face. So as we kick it off, why don't you begin there?
Okay, so yeah, I went through probably the similar story to most entrepreneurs where they've been in work when they was very young. You know, my dad was big on pushing me into I think looking back, he was trying to make me understand the whole trading time for money, etc. So I did the whole paper round, washing dishes in a restaurant, washing cars on weekends. I felt like I never had any time growing up. I was sort of pushed into work. And then when I was leaving school, my dad was in financial services, so he wanted me to come into the family business, right? And it's something that I considered, but I was always into sport. I wanted to play basketball and different things. Thought I was going to the NBA. that dream ended quite quickly. And then, so I worked for him for a little bit. Started to understand. I started to study CMAP, which was the mortgage exams at the time. And then I think it's called FPC 1 and 2 to then go into sort of the wealth management. I can't remember what they're called, but realized that I struggled to retain the information I needed. I was never very good at school, academically. So I went to a meeting the one day with him, and one of his clients said to me that, I think it's good what you're doing at this age, but you need to grow some hair on your face before I even have a conversation about money with you. And, I've got a full beard now, but I didn't start growing hair on my face. I was like 25. Right. I didn't know that at the time, but I was like, it doesn't look like I'm going to grow hair anytime soon. And I had a bit of urgency. I wanted to progress quite quickly. And I think it's a lot what my dad instilled. I never really was scared of failure. I was scared of letting him down because I could tell he wanted me to get, good grades, etc. But I don't know. I feel like he gave me that comfort probably to be like, just go out there, do it. If you fail, it's cool. You get back up and go again. So that sort of gave me the confidence to say, look, this isn't for me. I'm going to try and do it myself. So yeah.
Okay. Not being scared of failure. Where did that come from, and do you still have that?
I think there's always an element of fear of failure. No one wants to fail, right? And I never wanted to when I was younger, but I also wasn't too bothered. I had crazy optimism to the point where I never believed I was going to fail. And I never really looked at some of my failures as failures. I would always probably BSing myself a bit really, and like I've just segued into something else,
Yeah.
and an opportunity's come out of this. And so I've never really like sat in, only once I feel in business that I've sat in failure and beat myself up about it. But other than that, I've always just sort of rolled the punches and carried on. But I think it's probably a lot from my dad.
Okay, nice. So you decided that financial services wasn't for you. I think you pivoted into a couple of different businesses, including real estate. So take us through that area of your life.
So from there, I tried ton of different things. You know, I'll skip to the part probably where I felt like I started to make some headway, because I tried a lot. You know, I just, back then, you know, the internet wasn't what it was today, you know. So I tried various different things. Then my brother really gave me an idea. Like, he was in the hair industry. He started doing a lot of consulting. He was flying all around the world, really, with, you know, L'Oreal and different companies. And yeah, he's all over. Like, he had this thing where it's like my scissors and my passport, because he was going everywhere. So he came back and was like, look, I want to open like a barbershop, but I want to do it like high end, you know, so I want to have like a real British feel. So he wanted to call it Bojangles British Barber Club, he was called.
Nice.
And he's like, so at the time I was like, it's good to open one of these in the local area, but for me to really benefit from like investing in something like this, we need to think bigger. So I was like, let's do it, and let's just try and go down the franchise route. You know, if we can get it right, that's what we're going to do. So that's what we kind of went down that route. Realized on the third location that is it scalable? Yes, but it was also a challenge. The staff retention's hard. You kind of like train someone in that industry, they start to build a client base through your brand, and I don't blame them. They're like, these are my clients now. And the barrier to entry in that industry is so low, anyone can open a barbershop, right? We invested quite a lot into these locations, but other people didn't have to. Some people appreciated it, the customer journey that we took them through. Some didn't really care. So a few other opportunities came up at the time, and my brother then got offered something in Norway, I think, at that time. So he was like, look, this is a great opportunity. Take some equity in something a lot bigger. And the franchise model for us, the company that I was working with at the time, raised the bar again, and I was like, this is going to be a lot harder and a much longer time horizon than I wanted it, realistically. So then we just sold that business and then moved on to other things. And the next thing that I kind of dived into before going quite hard into real estate was the thing that really got me down, because it was actually a meal prep company.
Okay.
But you know, Landsec, they got 10 billion. A portfolio of 10 billion, something like that. They owned all the main shopping centres in the UK. They had 16 at the time. So I thought, right, we had a lot of people like on meal prep in general for like recurring revenue, which was quite good. But I was like, for us to really scale this, I want to open like multiple locations. And the easiest way to do it was through like, you know, kiosks like you see in Westfield. So we sat down with Landsec. They liked the business model. Of course they did, right? They wanted us. They wanted the rent, right? So, but they're like, oh, we're happy to back you in all 16. I was like, well, okay, that's pretty large investment to go into all 16. We went into the one in Cardiff because it was nearest to where I lived at the time.
Okay.
Everything was going pretty good, and then we had some quite large shareholder disputes, and things just went south. I can't speak too much about what happened, but it was damaged it massively. And you know, you basically it's Landsec or a hedge fund, right? They can only work with you to a certain level, and that failure there, that cut me, because I was the only shareholder that invested actual capital. We all invested time, but I felt like I put everything into that. And we actually had someone from the Middle East that was like, look, I love the idea. This is a long time ago, right? Now they're everywhere over here, right? He's like, this could work quite well. They like the branding. And so from there, I was like, at the time I was in real estate, and but that cut me, because I'm like, you know, and well, I'm sure we'll talk about real estate in a sec, but I think for you to really grow in real estate, the only ways to do it is to have something active that generates a lot of cash flow to you to invest into it. You need to be very good at raising money, or, you know, inherit money or something, you know, or you already have a ton of money, right? So there's only a few ways that you can really grow. You can be as creative as you want, but you need money to do it. So we were scaling quite quickly on that side of things, but this was like, for me, going to be the cash cow to deploy. And I had this, you know, big real estate empire dream until I started buying them and then realized that's not what I wanted.
Okay. And how long did you stay in that place and how did you get yourself out?
So I probably didn't stay in it too, looking back, it wasn't long, but it was probably the only thing that I've been involved in that failed that really, I don't know, it was something about it. I was way too emotionally attached to the idea. And I think it's because there was a lot of noise around me, like, that's not going to work. And I can't accept that. And you know, I'm not silly. I think that if I felt like it was a silly idea, then, but I was like, you know, and now it's evident that people want those sort of things. But I've seen fitness and health, it was taking a massive turn. You know, you're talking probably 10 years ago now. Now everyone's crazy for it, right? But it was taking a huge turn. It was probably a little bit early anyway. But we could have worked through it and would have been set some really good foundations quite early on, and controlled a lot of the industry at the time. We could have, if the plan went the way it was meant to go. I had the right people.
And I've heard you say before that no one has done that exact thing till now. Is it something you think you could go back into, or if you found a business that was doing that now, do you think you'd know what levers to pull to make it work?
I probably wouldn't go back into anything related to the food, production of food. I think I admire anyone that does that well. It's very hard.
What makes it hard, food?
I think the people and food at volume. So I don't really like that industry anyway, personally, but producing food at serious volume, which meal prep you have to. I've seen people try and do it, and I've seen some successful people in the UK do it, but what you find is you hit a certain level where the quality you start to compromise on quality to grow, and you start to see people at the start, everything tastes good, everything's good, and then all of a sudden you start to see they take the next leg up, and then it gets a bit bland, and it's a very hard one to get right.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
they do it well here because I feel like, labor's very cheap here. So, and I know a lot of meal prep companies share similar kitchens as well. So you can get it done quite well here because the cost of fulfillment is fairly cheap. The cost of production is very cheap, and marketing's a different ball game, of course. But people do it well. You can order something fairly cheap here, quite quickly, delivered fresh. In the UK, that's very hard to execute.
Your last stop before entering the dream world with real estate, what were you doing and what told you that this wasn't the business for you?
So I was doing a lot of consulting at the time. Being in the trenches in business and wearing all the hats, you start to see patterns. So you naturally, I feel, especially when you're obsessed with making it work, you learn a lot about just business in general and what levers to pull. So I started to have quite a broad view of how things operate in business. And then I started to pick up some consultant roles, which was linked to equity anyway. So I was doing a lot of that at the time. We also, I was involved in a clothing brand at the time, which I ended up selling my shares in. We brought on someone that would be classed as a bit of a celebrity in the UK, realised that, and someone else that was in and around a very good network of individuals. They was in jewellery, but that just didn't work. Getting someone of influence involved, I think understanding what they're good at and what they're not was probably our downfall, because they can do a lot, right? They got a lot of access and a lot of resource, but you need to understand where they're at. So sold my shares in that. The consultant roles, decided not to take equity in two of them. The third one, we all pivoted into something new, and I decided not to continue, and they ended up doing incredibly well. Picked up some huge clients. That was sort of where I was at pre real estate. And then I just dived in the deep end. I thought, right, look, I kind of understand how this works, but I want to educate myself and understand exactly how it works. So I paid quite a decent amount of money to go and learn quite quickly, and then just dived into it.
Okay. And that was diving into real estate, or diving into, okay.
Real estate, yeah.
And what were you doing in real estate? Was it sort of buy to let? Was it sort of HMO, BRRR?
Yeah, just buy to lets.
Okay.
Just when I went on that course, I was like, I'm just going to get 100 of these. That was my mindset. And we did pretty good. We bought I think the first 8 months we bought 12. So it was like, and what people look at in real estate now when it comes to BRR, they was like all what people call all money out deals, right? So the deals were done how they was meant to be done. What I figured out probably after the 6th or 7th in that short space of time, I was like, whether you like it or not, the money has to come from somewhere to do these deals. Now, the average deal size, even if you buy in the Welsh Valleys or up north, or the places that people look to start with, you still need, on the low end, 75k, high end maybe 150, 160. So to go and get 10, you still need to go and find. I know you can recycle the money, but it's still going to be about £1 million of whether 75% of that, by the time the rest is recycled, needs to be raised or found from somewhere. And I was like, okay, well, even though we pull all the money out, most of these are cash flowing between 250 and 350 quid a month. For me to get just a 10 grand a month, I need 30, 40 of these, depending on the cash flow. When you start working out how much money you actually need to get to 30 or 40 or recycle in whichever way you look at it, and that's if you pull all the money out, you don't have to leave any in. I was like, this doesn't even make sense, because I already understood funding for business and acquisition at this point. I was like, I'm in the wrong vehicle. This isn't going to get me what I want. Okay. I got sold the passive income dream, which I don't believe is as passive as people say. It's fairly passive, but it's not as passive as people say. And there's also a lot of money that needs to be raised for a very small amount. And I had people in the industry, because I'm not saying people are brainwashed, but when you get excited about something, you start to see a bit of success, you start to brainwash yourself and look for confirmation bias. Whether you're looking online, what you're scrolling for, you're going to keep seeing the same thing. So you're just going to reinforce the idea that you have. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. I was always in this mindset, and this is anything that I've looked at or invested in, and it's very hard to do this, is whatever I believe at the time, I'll just go and watch a ton of content that destroys my belief. And at the end of it, I'm like, let me make my own mind up. And that's hard, because you don't want to do that. That's the last thing you want to do, is because you instantly are like, I don't believe what they're saying. And you start watching a couple of hours of that content, and it's quite easy. You can make a good argument for any side. Yeah. But when you're in it, you're on the front lines and you're doing it, I started to realize that this isn't really going to get me what I want. I need to find something that produces huge amount of cash flow first. Then if I want to diversify into this afterwards, then I believe real estate plays an important role in a portfolio. But
have you jumped back in yet?
No. We picked some real estate up through buying companies, but that's just because they're held in the actual trading company, and it's quite expensive to pull out on small businesses. So
the UK obviously has a lot of people trying to become successful, make those first couple of steps into wealth through real estate. Very popular. What would you say is the biggest argument against real estate and towards buying and selling companies?
Okay, so if we just use an example of a very small property, right? Let's say you're buying and look, I'm saying there's other strategies, right? You can go down the HMO route. It's a lot more work and, a lot more planning that needs to go into it and a lot more capital. But let's just use a typical buy-to-let, because that's usually the first people dip their toes in, right? I think if you're going to go into real estate, I think people should just focus straight into commercial and understand commercial to resi. I think it does require more capital, but I think that's the route people should take. Now,
commercial to resi, just quickly explain that for people.
A commercial building that you can turn to residential, or you can split it up and some of it's commercial, some of it's residential.
Is that a popular strategy? Is that easy to do?
I wouldn't say it's easy to do, but I think that if you're going to learn a skill, learn the one that gives you what you want at the end of the day. And I think that the people that I know in that strategy, I think they're the most successful people I know in real estate personally.
Interesting. Okay.
So if we just look at a buy to let, I don't know what they are at the moment, but let's say you find something that's about 75 grand in one of the small towns. Let's say the refurb's going to cost you conservatively 25 with fees, etc. Let's say you're all in for, I don't know, 100. Let's say you're all in for like, I don't know, 120 grand with everything, right? That's probably going to, you still have to find 120 grand or most of it, right? I know you can use the bank or whatever, but you're going to need to find the shortfall. So if you've got no money at all to start with, at some point, those people are going to have to get paid back. You also need the skill regardless of understanding, stacking that deal. And because you're going to be like, this is what I anticipate the GDV to be. I can pull this out. I can pay the investor back over this period of time if it's not your money. If it is your money, you're still going to want to know how long it's going to take you to pull that money back out, right? And then you're like, okay, for doing this, for the first couple of months, if I'm not right, then, or maybe first couple, maybe the first 12 potentially, I've got to pay someone else back. So yes, I have the asset, but I've got to pay somebody back for a period of time. If it does go right, best case scenario, then you're like, well, I'm going to start cash flowing 200-300 quid a month. Now, that same 120K, if you can put your hands on 120K, 100K, 50K, what you can get from a small business is just, there's no comparison. So I've had a few conversations with people about comparing. I just don't think you can compare because the business will win every single time. And
Are there any exceptions to that?
Is there an exception to that? Yeah, if you buy the wrong business.
Okay.
And that's a skill too, right? Identifying the right. There's no dead certain way of doing it because everyone wants to take a different path, right? Some people are going to be super passionate about real estate. Some will be like, I just can't see myself running a business. I don't want to run a business. And that's okay too. It's just what I personally think.
So let's talk about running a business. You've called it the best and most powerful wealth building tool. Why do you say that? If you look at if you Google right now the top 20 wealthiest people in the world, every single one of them will be in business. 90% of them will be in business and M&A. None of them are in real estate. And none of them will have their wealth in real estate. None of them will be in, I don't know, FX, drop shipping, any of that. Every single person will be in business and M&A. So, there's no point in me saying what I think and the reasons why I think it because of what it's done for me. I've dabbled in pretty much everything you can think of, all the different paths to wealth. And because I'm somebody that's obsessed with growth, I've tried all of them. And the only one, for me, the only vehicle that can build wealth and cash flow at the same time, in my opinion, like serious cash flow, is business. Because we're not looking to buy something that's chucking off 20, 30 grand profit. I don't see doing a very small deal or mid-sized deal, there's no difference in the effort and time goes into it, but what you get afterwards is different. So what the slightly larger business is going to be easier to fund. Slightly larger business is going to have infrastructure, most likely have management. It's going to probably be a better business in general. So you're better off focusing on that anyway. But yeah, the stats are the stats at the end of the day. Okay. And did you know any of that before you went into this? Did you know that literally the wealthiest people in the world have been in business and that is essentially the way that they've been able to become who they are?
So I did some research. For me, when I went into real estate and realized that, okay, this is good, but it requires, it's very capital intensive and it's not as passive as people led me to believe. But what I did know was business beforehand. And I knew that I had a decent lifestyle from having an active business before real estate. The way I went into real estate with a mindset of I can't ask people for money. That was me. And I remember the person that I paid for to coach me, I remember him saying, you write down all the names of the people you believe have enough money to invest or some surplus cash that they could invest. I was like, there's not a chance that I'm ringing any of those people. He's like, we don't have to ring them, but you have to be able to learn to raise money. So I went into this without having a mindset of raising money. So I I was fortunate that I'd been in business and I had some money to be able to buy at least the first one, to be able to be, I don't want to ask for money. Now, what I will say, and I think this would benefit some of the people listening to get over that limiting belief, because now we raise funds. He told me something that is quite gold, and some people may have heard this before because other people probably used it, but he said, right, you've got the people in your phone book that you believe, have money. So you're not going to directly ask them for money, but you are going to ask them for money. He said, you're going to ask the top 5 to come to dinner with you. You're going to pay for their dinner and tell them that, look, you've got a real estate investment opportunity that an investor's going to invest in, and you'd like their opinion on whether they think that it should be something I should consider, pursue, because this person's going to back you on more deals. And you said, just make the deal up. Now, I invited 6 people, 3 turned up.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah, and 3 turned up. And I was comfortable because I wasn't asking them for money, but you kind of are, right? So I took them through this, like it was made up deal. And there and then the one was like, yeah, I think it's fantastic. I would do this deal. And that one person said to me, can they invest in that deal instead of the other investor? But I just said, look, that I've committed to the other person, but if anything else like this comes up, and I thought, wow, there is a way of doing this. You can do it without saying, oh, I'm raising money. Do you want to? So, and also it's a fine line of going out there and asking for money, right? There's laws around pushing for that online. You have to be very careful as well.
Okay. So I'm very much interested in certain factors in terms of life, and those are people and place and time, right? And in terms of achieving what you want to achieve and what you should achieve in life, many a time those things need to sort of come into alignment, right? And so in terms of time, why now in terms of buying businesses? You've spoken about this golden opportunity, generational opportunity, buying businesses. So take us through that in the US, in the UK, here, all around the world.
So this isn't me that's come up with this idea, but there's been a lot of research around this. They call it the silver tsunami, right? With the baby boomers. Now, by 2030, every baby boomer will be 65 or older. And the US is a completely different kettle of fish. But if we just look at the UK, I actually posted this today on my story. So the FSP did some research, and the research showed that 120,000 businesses over the next decade are going to hit a transition point of ownership. Now, that's not even the interesting part. The interesting part for me is that they also control 80% of the private wealth in the UK. Now, most of the wealth in the UK is going to be divvied up amongst business, real estate, and some other things, okay? So you have an entire generation of people that have, if they still own a business today, chances are it's a pretty good business, probably been around for decades, right? So they've withstood the test of time. They're clearly resilient businesses, probably weathered a few recessions and storms. And now they're at a situation where they've probably don't see their children taking over. If you speak to them off market, or if they are on market, there's a reason why they're selling, right? Now, a lot of the time, they don't understand the whole process of selling a business. I've spoken to people off market that didn't even know that they could sell a business. Their entire net worth's trapped in the business. They got a ridiculous amount of cash in bank because they just built it up. They don't want to take it out because of taxes. And then you have a conversation where there are slightly more tax efficient ways of taking that money out the business, especially if you sell it. So that's why I think this is such a unique opportunity, because if you look at the generation of children today, how many of those children, there will be some, want to go and run their dad's plumbing firm, or, I don't know, their mum's manufacturing company. When, some of them are building personal brands, some of them are dancing on TikTok. There's, they're doing those different things, right? You have this whole AI phase, and, people are like, I want a piece of this. So, I even feel that there's going to be a lack of talent going through just education system in general. The people, I don't think they have the desire that they once did. So that's why it's such a unique opportunity. You've got some very good, solid companies that probably going to end up closing the doors, or, I always think, right, 100% of business owners are going to exit their business. Some will successfully sell, but whether we like it or not, they will exit the business.
What would you say to people that say that you are essentially stealing from old people, that you are exploiting the elderly, getting the best deal for yourself? And I know you said it's win-win, but some people say you're getting the best deal for yourself. You obviously want at the lowest multiple, and these people have spent their whole lives building these businesses.
Well, if they're going to sell or close the business, one or the other, right? As soon as you give them the idea that they can sell their business, the first thing that they normally do is they go online and they start Googling. And then they end up speaking to one of the larger brokers out there. And they come back and they say, well, I know you think it's worth X, but this person said, I think it's worth Y. And I'm quite transparent with them. I'm like, look, this, and even with us, it's like when it comes to funding, you can be very transparent with, like, this is what a bank is willing to pay or, give us to buy your company. That's what they believe is enough before the part starts putting stress on the business. You can go and sign up with those, but I already know their fee. And if you actually looked at the time on average those businesses sit on the market will never get sold, you can also go and find that out online as well. They will say one thing and there'll be another. So for us, like, we try and incentivize them a bit longer term, depending on the business, of course. But for them, we're like, we know, and a lot of the time, we have people on our team that can help them from a tax perspective as well, on how to extract the capital out the company in the most tax efficient way. So we help them in a few different ways. Realistically, they're going to pick the person that there's a bit of a trade-off, right? It isn't always about money. Of course, a lot of it is. They're going to be like, I want the most I can get, but they also need to know it's going to a safe pair of hands. And we've seen that. Even the people that I've worked with, younger people, has offered a business owner less and the business owners chose them. I think people know if someone's genuine. Rapport's massive. Is the most important part of this.
It's so, it's actually very refreshing to hear you say that, because the numbers and the drivers of a deal, the drivers of value in the business are what a lot of people focus on. But you've gone and you're sort of saying, no, like the people skills, the rapport, the relationship really, really matters. People that have built something for their whole lives want to know that they're selling it to someone that is going to preserve it and make it even better, right? Just quickly, actually, what are some of your favorite sectors right now?
I think renewables, trades in general, I think are very good. Surprisingly, and this is quite new for me, is professional services. I was of the opinion probably 12 months ago that the place for professional services are going to change because of AI. But we work a lot with private equity, and I was quite surprised to learn that they was all over it. So not so much law, but accountancy, accountancy firms, compliance training, wealth management. These
are good businesses to buy, are they?
Well, some of them are going to be heavily regulated, so it's a bit harder for you to get into it. So we've taken a slightly different approach to getting into that sector. But I was surprised to learn that PE are all over professional services.
Interesting. I've heard you, so you mentioned trade, I've heard you talk before about like civils. What makes those sorts of businesses strong contenders for someone like you?
So civils, we're still in it, but I wouldn't advise now. I think that civil engineering or just groundworks businesses in general, depending on what part of civils you're in, a lot of them there's a lot of concentration risk when it comes to house builders. And I've seen it firsthand where I've seen very good companies fail quite quickly because of a rumor. I'm talking companies that are doing over 1 million EBITDA that have failed because of a rumor, and then house builders like, we're not paying anymore because they believe that, so house builders are ruthless. So civils probably not so much. Now, Trades, there's a lot of funding. For instance, if you're in, let's just use electrical companies and plumbing. Now, there's a big push for just renewables in general, air source heat pumps on the plumbing side, solar on the electrical side. So there's a lot of opportunity for recurring revenue, contracted revenue, which if you are building to sell at some point, then all of that holds a lot of weight. I also believe that in those two sectors, and this isn't to disrespect any other trades, but you're working with the slightly more educated trades. And that's what I'm saying. It's not, that doesn't mean that the others aren't, but it's quite complex to learn certain parts of those trades. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And also when you're talking about building to sell, which I think every business should build as if they're going to sell, even if they're not looking to sell, because you'll build a better business in general. But I think that they're more scalable. So if you look at some of the other sectors in construction, so let's say scaffolding, for instance, scaffolding, again, you can build up some pretty good recurring revenue. It's quite sticky because you can charge to put it up, charge to take it down. If we go through a massive build phase in the UK, which kind of, even though when it slows down, there's always something going on, it's a good business to be in. The problem is very, very CapEx heavy. So if you want to continue to grow and scale, you keep buying more poles, boards. Also, recruitment becomes quite hard in that industry because people will leave you for £5 a day. I've seen people happily travel an extra half an hour to work to get an extra £5 a day. So that's quite hard. Well, I feel like in plumbing and electrics, it's different. So that's why. Yeah.
And in terms of metrics, key metrics you're looking at when you're looking at a business, what are you focusing on that if a business has if a business has this set of things, it's an almost slam dunk opportunity? Does that exist? Is there a slam dunk opportunity?
Some can look like a slam dunk opportunity. There's a lot of variables, right? So things can change. So the three things that we look at immediately is the true cash flow. Because when you start to normalize EBITDA, things change, right? When you start to make the adjustments, because there's always adjustments to be made.
And for people that don't understand, what is normalizing EBITDA? What are the adjustments?
So, and it can be negative or positive. So you could have some replacement costs needed, which will negatively impact EBITDA. So let's say you need to replace the owner in the business. And if the owner's taken out a lot of dividends and they're paying themselves 12 grand a year, to replace them may cost you, depending on what industry, anything from 50 to 100 grand, sometimes more, right? And also if they're a true founder entrepreneur, probably going to need 2 or 3 people to replace them. So, you could have an EBITDA of 500k, all of a sudden it's 400, maybe even 350 straight away. Now, what you could also find is a director's pension has been, I don't want to say abused because they're entitled to do it, but, they could be taking out 200 grand a year in their pension because they're prepping for retirement. Now, that's going to, all of a sudden bring that EBITDA back up to the 500k. Now, and we're happy, we've been on the buy side where the owner doesn't understand that. So they've adjusted EBITDA with their accountant and they haven't added back their director's pension. And we've said to them, so I think you have to create a win-win. You have to be ethical. This isn't about trying to, steal a business from somebody, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a transition period, whether you like it or not. When they start to get educated on the sale and they start to tell people they sold their business, do you really want to be the person that they come to 3 months into the transition and say, well, I didn't know we could do, so it doesn't make sense. Plus, you want to keep the company culture, right? So they're the things that can adjust or normalize EBITDA. There's other things, of course. There's rent adjustments. It's basically working out what the true cash flow or profit of the business should be once you make a few adjustments in it.
Okay. So the main 3 things. So true cash flow, number 1.
Number 1. Number 2 is the dependency, and that's going to come in the dependency on the key individual in the business, usually the owner. And also you have to look at the management team. So if they do have a good management team, what's the age of that management team? Because it's all good, the owner saying, I don't play a role in the day-to-day, but the GM is 65 years old And you're like, okay, at some point that person's going to need to be replaced. We need to put that progression plan in now. Could be some other key individuals. It could be very niche. It could be cybersecurity, where they're going to be more expensive to recruit and is a very niche skill set. So they're the type of things on the dependency of a key individual. The second part of dependency is dependency on certain clients. So any customer concentration risk. That's another thing that's a key factor. Now, these are also things that you can overcome, but they're going to affect valuation quite significantly. They're those two. And then the last one is upside. So there's other things that you would consider, but it needs to be upside. And an example I'll give on this is if you used to buy, say, a care home and it's at, 96% occupancy and is a building, it's like, well, I'm paying all the money for this today because I'm paying, there's zero upside. Now, yes, there's some optimization of costs maybe, but in most businesses you may be able to strip out 10, 15, 20% of the cost, but there's unlimited upside. Whereas in something like a care home, the upside is going to come from extending the building, or you have to buy another one. So they're the three things. There has to be some upside. And also when you want to come to sell to PE or you want to sell to anyone, they need to see upside. So whatever narrative, story or journey you take a buyer through, if you want to sell down the line, they need to understand, right, what's next?
Okay.
How do we get some upside?
Would you rather own a company that was a monopoly or a near monopoly in a slowly dying industry, or a company that was a little bit scrappy but had lots of headroom and lots of things to change?
Good question. I think it would depend on where I'm at. So now I'd probably want the one with the headroom, bit scrappy, we can make it better. Because I feel like now true value creation is going to come from more active operational focus. Whereas if we look at PE over the last couple of eras, we've gone through financial engineering. We've gone through, I'll throw my friend in as an operating partner and oversee it. We've gone through different phases of value creation, right? Now I do think that, it's going to come from 5 things normally. And Dan Cremond, who's one of the best at this, he got a great book. And the 5 ways he thinks are the only 5 ways where you're going to get true value creation is going to come from growing the revenue, expanding margins, strategic acquisitions, multiple expansion, or reducing or paying down the debt in the business. Now, of course, there's other things. So growing revenue, there's a ton of things that are going to be involved there. Expanding margins, again, there's a lot of things, but they're the 5 true ways. And I think that going into the era we're going into now, ones that are more active operationally and get stuck in, I think that's where you're going to generate most of the value. So I'd probably pick the second one. Whereas if I was sat on the fence a little bit now or taking a bit more time out, maybe I'd pick the other one.
Okay, nice. So let's talk about a couple of deal structures. How do people that you teach and people that you're around, how do they get into buying these businesses? I know there are people that buy businesses for £1. There are people that buy businesses no money down. I know a lot of people are after those, but you're sort of like, it's not necessarily what you should be looking for. But explain a couple of deal structures that make it possible for people to come in with 50 or 100K, as you mentioned before, instead of going into real estate, come into buying a business and actually buying something that makes them money.
Okay, so a few of the ways you mentioned then. So a £1 deal in most cases will be something distressed, and that's also a good avenue to go down. But if you don't have any business acumen or you don't understand how to turn around a business, probably not the route you take to start with. Those businesses then are pretty good if you have a good solid platform and then you can absorb that or bring those into your ecosystem. The ways that we typically focus on the 2 as a first-time acquirer, this one's going to be a typical leverage buyout, and we'll talk about some structures in a sec. Or secondly, is going to be more of the consultant for equity role. Now, the consultant for equity role, I feel, has a huge upside because you don't have to raise any debt, and you don't have to be the person with the skill set. You of course you have to do the deal itself, and I can talk through some quite creative ways in a sec, but you could bring people to it. So for instance, the most recent one that I've done and we've just sold, he was very reluctant to give away equity. He ended up saying, I'm happy to pay your retainer. I'm happy to pay a larger retainer, but I don't want to give up any equity. I've had the business for 35 years. So I was like, look, I'm not doing it unless I can get some equity. Because I'm thinking about, I already had a buyer in mind. So I'm like, I know what I can probably get for this. I need to benefit from the equity. He even said, look, I'm happy to give you a success fee, but I knew there's other ways to do it. So now when we're working on a consultant for equity deal, I know this sounds crazy to anyone listening, but we try to work into 33% of equity, right? Now, the reason why is because we're only going to do deals that we believe we can add more than 33% of value on exit. And that's mostly going to come from bits that we're going to do on pricing, etc., and just getting visibility of what's going on in the business.
And what's the timeline for this improvement in the company?
So we're working on companies that are pretty much ready to sell.
Okay.
Put a 24-month timeline in place. They're already looking to exit. So we're not approaching them with this idea. We're approaching them to buy them. And if the valuation gap's too big and it can't really be closed with like an earnout or some performance, then we look at other ways to close that gap or get involved. So rather than acquiring it 100%, because their ambition is to get more for the business, is probably a little bit too high. So then we can participate in that exit in different ways. Now you could just sell them, but there's other ways to do it. So in this case, very reluctant to give up equity. He said, okay, if you do X, you can have 10%. Now, where I was already working with the buyer, I understood what they wanted because they just acquired a business very similar, but smaller in the similar area. They valued the business at 4 times, which for me to buy it as a platform was slightly too toppy for me at the time. So I said, okay, well, what's the number that emotionally detaches you from the business? And it was double what they initially valued the business at. But because I knew what we could sell for if we got the business to the KPIs I had agreed, I said, okay, if we get to your number, I'll get 10% up to the number plus my retainer, and then we're going to put a hurdle in at the number. Anything over and above the hurdle, I want 20 pence of every pound. Now, of course, people are happy to give away what they don't have yet. If they're thinking, well, I should have asked for 50 pence, right? Or should I 100? But if they thought, well, I'm going to get the double where I'm at now, then yeah, I don't mind. So that's how we structured that deal, and it worked really well.
You must have been super confident that you could get this done, right?
Yeah, so I was already, when I ordered it, I put the business to my audit and my team. The EBITDA was already higher than they thought it was. Now, I immediately upgraded their accounting package. With their accountant, they already offered more proactive accounting. They just didn't take that. I brought a consultant in to negotiate some of the contracts to get some actual recurring revenue. They had it, but there was no contracted revenue. This was relationships over 3 decades, right? Got the revenue contracted, which has increased the value, and we doubled the EBITDA in literally 13 months. So from where they thought it was at. So for us, we increased the value of the business massively. So I was confident because, unless I'm confident, because at the end of the day, there's time at risk, right? If I don't get to where I need to get to, I've wasted 24 months. So,
and you mentioned that you had a buyer in mind. So how much of this is you knowing how to turn a company around, knowing what buttons to push, and knowing what the buyer that you have in mind is going to want? So things like the contract revenue and things like that.
So beforehand, I used to just go into it blind before I found the buyers first. And I'm just hoping that what I do will work. And you can put like founder buybacks in if you trigger the call option where they can buy it back from you. But now I just I find the buyer first. I know what they want, and then we basically put in place everything that they want as a buyer. Of course, they're still going to change the goalpost at the end, but you pretty much know you're working towards what they want. If you can get it there, you're going to get an exit.
Okay. So you teach people to do this. What is the way to be successful? And is there a certain type of person or student that you have that you're like, this guy's going to make it, this lady's going to do really well, and this person probably doesn't have it? because, and I ask you because there are some, and I want to go into talking about courses and education and stuff like that. There are many types of ways to make money where people say, it's a hard graft. You got to get on the phone, call lots of people, send out lots of emails. This doesn't sound like that. This sounds a lot, not that there's no skill in that, there is, but this sounds like there is a lot of finesse, a lot of skill, there is a lot of nuance in it, which may fit certain people and not others. Am I right about that or not?
Yeah, I do believe most people can. It's a lot of it's mindset, right? I think anything that you decide to do, wherever vehicle you choose, I think 85% of everything is mindset. As soon as you believe you can do it, the knowledge is such a small part. The knowledge obviously helps, right? Because that's the skill, that's the technical part. But I know we've had people that has joined our community that's ex-Deloitte, ex-KPMG, ex-PwC, ex-bankers that have joined and they struggle to pull the trigger because I think that they already have a ton of knowledge. So they've come from a background where risk is everything. That's their job, right? So everything looks like risk, especially in SME, right? So, and I've spoke to them. I'm like, you already know how to do. You don't need this. And then I've had other people that have zero skill, no business acumen, no experience whatsoever, and they've just followed the process and just done it. And because they're curious, because they're slightly vulnerable, they just follow the framework and they get it done. And some of our most successful deal makers, people can't believe it, honestly. They look at it and they're like, how have they done that? So yeah, I think curiosity is a big thing.
Okay. So you can't know too much, but you have to know enough. What is enough? What is the starting level of knowledge to play this game?
I think it's belief, honestly. I think that only because, like, if you had said to me 4 or 5 years ago, can someone with no experience in business, have no idea, come from, I don't know, working in Sainsbury's, because I'm using that as an example because one of our guys was working in Sainsbury's and went and bought a company. If you had said to me 4 or 5 years ago, can someone do that? I'd probably say, because I'm a very realistic person, I'd be like, I think they probably need to go and read some books, get a good understanding of this first, speak to some people, build a bit of knowledge, and then get into it. But because I've seen people come from just...
You've had teachers as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Teachers that have gone from... teaching to, I don't know what they bought, but...
They bought nurseries.
Okay.
And they bought a couple now.
And so what is it that is allowing them to do it, and somebody coming out of, one of the biggest banks or professional service companies in the world not able to do it?
Overthinking. And I get it, because we are people in my team now that are has come from those firms and now work with us, and they're way better than me. The way they analyze deals, point out risks, that's why they work with us, right? I'm like, they are insane at what they do. But if you put them into, and not all of them, but the ones that I've come across, put them into like a role where they have to be a true entrepreneur, I don't know what it is. And they're not all like that, but that's what I've found is that people from like a heavy finance background, because they're used to risk, they understand the mechanics of this before they even started. So, and because they're working on much bigger deals and where they've come from, and then they're seeing this small little business, the risk look huge because they're like, wait, I've analyzed, huge deals, right? Yeah. So it's very different, right? And there's a lot of people on the team where now it's just us. So maybe that's what it is, but yeah.
Okay. So this is Gulf Standard Time, based in what I like to call the capital of ambition. What brought you to Dubai originally?
Originally I heard a lot of good things, sunshine, network was incredible. I'd never been, the only other place I can really, there's still no comparison. Miami has a very entrepreneurial vibe. This is probably, there's nothing like this in the whole world. That was the main thing. And then there's a lot of things, there's a lot of changes in the UK in different places, and it just makes sense.
And what makes sense for you living in Dubai versus living anywhere else in the world right now?
So I've got a family, 3 little girls, a wife and 3 little girls. So it's very safe here. I feel like they can be kids here. Sunny every day. We had a few cold days recently, but sunny every day. And the entrepreneurial flair, I've never seen anything. Like you can literally, and I feel like you can get in front of people easier here. In the UK, I don't know, it feels days do go quick here, but everyone's just so busy in the UK. Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere like this in the world.
Okay. What is the difference? What are the differences between buying a business in the UK, in the UAE, and in the US?
That is very different. So UAE, the banks aren't as open to it's acquisition finance to all the major banks, but what they're looking for in regards to an actual asset to loan the money to you to buy is very different. Is very strict, and the business owners also, it's a bit weird because like you see some people that basically give them away and then someone want crazy numbers. So UAE is very different. It's still early, very premature market. US is completely different. Credit is on hand there. So you have like the SBA program there that they've now, as of last year, stopped any non-US residents using. So before you could participate in it, providing a US citizen owns a majority shareholder of the company. And if you sit underneath, I think it was 18%, you don't have to sign a PG. So it was a very good tool. Problem is now, and I've noticed this going back and forth for the last couple of years, you have the SBA lenders that are hosting local meetups where they're educating business owners on the SBA program. So they throw them on biz buy sell and it becomes a bit of an auction. So, and everyone's raising all these search funds and it's like who's willing to pay the most. So it's a bit of an auction. The UK is still very different. The access to credit is a little bit harder than the US, but it's making sure you present the deal to the right lender in the UK. The US is a lot more bullish on giving you the money. The UK, you can get a very good deal, but you present a construction deal to a lender that's not willing to lend in construction, and all of a sudden that deal gets passed around all the other lenders and it looks like a non-starter. So it's understanding that side of it and making sure you're working with even just the right finance broker helps with that.
Okay. And what about some of the deals and companies available in different countries?
The US is low. It's huge, right? So there's a lot more competition in the US now because, you look at some of the Ivy League schools, they all have ETA courses now. So entrepreneurship through acquisition, you have someone that's wanted to go down a route of, management consultancy. Some of them are the most successful acquisitions. They're like, okay, I'm just going to go and buy this. And there's a good podcast called Acquiring Minds, and they talk. There's a lot of people that's come from their background that's gone and bought a small business, and they're earning more than they would in 10 years of work in one of the big four, or whatever. The UK, there's tons of businesses available in UK, US, Australia, Canada. There's loads.
And here?
It's picking up here, but I think because the access to capital is different, you need a lot of private investment to get good deals over the line. It makes it harder. And also the amount of paperwork over here. We bought one 3 years ago, a real estate agency, and I must have signed, I don't even know, probably 20 different pieces of paper in different it was a bit of a nightmare. So
one of the things I love about this region is the fact that the sheikhs and the sort of founding fathers had a vision to make this a place where everybody wanted to be, right? In truth, it's far too hot, far too small for it to be a place that the world was going to converge upon, right? But they made it happen in, less than 30 years. And so it's one of the reasons why I feel like when people are here, the mindset of a lot of people here is second to none. You spoke about mindset earlier. What is Dee Ludlow's mindset?
So don't be scared of risk. I think that if you don't take risks, you'll, without a doubt, pick up the tab later on in life. And then secondly, a longer term vision, so a longer time horizon. Everyone's obsessed with tomorrow, and I get it, you should have urgency, but the way I like to look at it is, it doesn't matter, first of all, who's winning on mile 3 of a 26-mile marathon, but secondly, you're running your own marathon. I think that people get so obsessed with what other people are doing, and me and you could have an identical path, we could do the exact same thing, and me and you are still going to run a different marathon. So I think that for me, that was the thing that really changed my mindset was, I know they say comparison to steal or joy or whatever the quote is, but I was always like, am I behind? Everything I've done, am I behind? And I always look for the outlier and be like, well, they're doing this. And it's hard not to, right? And I think it's good in ways to be like, well, they're doing this, I should be able to do it. But I think you need to understand you're running your own marathon. So for me, yeah, don't be scared of risk. And I like to take a bit of a longer term time horizon. It's probably since I've had kids as well that my risk appetite's gone down.
And how have you gone about building this mindset that you have now? You mentioned earlier, obviously, belief and having belief in yourself, but how have you gone about, you read books and stuff like that, but how have you constructed that?
I think it's just experience. I think, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have a dad that was like, when I was a kid on the way to school, he'd be playing a Tony Robbins tape in the car. and then when I was like 14, 15, he joined a coaching program called Strategic Coach, which is run by Dan Sullivan, the guy that wrote Who Not How. He was like the first 10X guy before like Grant. So I used to fly to Chicago, and he would be like, do you want to come? And obviously I couldn't go to it, but just the fact that, walk around the city at 14 years old and knowing that's what he's there for and listening to him talk about it. At the time, I probably didn't pay much attention, but those things do stick. And I think that I put a lot down to, he come from nothing, and yes, he didn't get to the heights that I want to get to or whatever, but for what he did in the time that he was here, I think that I couldn't thank him enough for the mindset side of it and the belief.
I love that, man. You mentioned before you want to get to 100 million liquid. Between where you are now and where you want to get to, what is missing from your mindset? What are the pieces that you still need to add to become that sort of more exceptional version of you?
I think it's just time. I think that do everything I can every day, take them small steps every day. And I think eventually that compounds and it'll happen. That's all it is, I think. And I think that it's just understanding that not every day is going to be, you're going to take a few steps back some days, and it is what it is. I think that the price of success is what it is. I just think that we get too wrapped up with our own minds, and a lot of the little speed bumps we hit on the way, I think everything that has gone wrong for me looking back, it never seems as bad years down the line. So, and if they are big, it's just a learning experience. I think that some acceptance is massive. I never used to be as like self-aware when I was younger, and I'd always get eaten up by things. But now I'm just like, it is what it is.
Okay. So one of the things behind this podcast is breaking down the factors behind success. Who would you say is the most successful person that you know, and what are the elements that made them who they are?
So I don't know what the most successful person is, because it depends, right? I look at people like money, as in like wealth of money, and I think, there's some people I'm like, and some of those people have said they got a bit of luck. All of them have said, I worked hard, but I got pretty lucky. Right time, right place. And I don't like to think that, but that's what they say. But also there's other sides of success. I know some people that may not have 200-300 million or whatever, but they're still, they're going to 20-30 million, but they've got, I would say, a more appealing life that I would want than the others. I think it depends what you want and what you class as wealth and how much power and different things you want, or do you want to just be a ghost with money? I don't know. So I don't know. The one person I will say, so my cousin Craig, he, for me, lived the American dream as a Brit. So he moved there like 28 years ago, slept on his friend's sofa for a couple of years, worked for a company called Saunders in the UK, worked his way up there in biotech, started his own company, built it, sold it to KKR. I'm like,
no way.
Well, he sold it to a different PE fund, but he's done 3 PE turns. He's now a KKR. Like now he spends most of his time playing polo. That's his newfound sport. And he's got a lovely lake house. He's got a lovely house in the city where he lives. For me, he's done amazing. And
what was core to Craig's success, would you say?
I think getting out of his comfort zone, like moving to the States on your own when you're like a young kid and just being like, don't really have no money. I'm over here. I think that, well, definitely discipline and consistency. I think it's just a common trend of people. When you look at them, you're like, how'd they get there? And you mentioned the same things, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, man, because again, I've sort of been put together, it's a lot of ingredients for success that I see across the board. You mentioned consistency, which is one of them. You mentioned being comfortable with discomfort. Independence and having your own mind is one that I see as really, really big as well. And I've heard you say before, and the thing is, when I listen to people coming onto this podcast, there's usually something that they have said, or I've heard them say a lot that just strikes chord with me. And yours was being a teenager in Wales, and you just loved America. You loved the NBA, and you loved rap music, and everyone was sort of like taking the mick out of you, and you were like, but I like it, right? And you might now go by a company, and everyone's like, oh, you sure? And you're like, but like, I believe in it. And everyone that's successful, there's a level of that you just need to have. And it's something that I just see so many people come on, and I don't necessarily talk to them about it, whatever. We had a quick chat obviously before, and you mentioned a couple of things, but it's just these themes I just see across the lives of so many different people that you just begin to see that they are things that people either had or they didn't have, and then they sort of just construct into themselves because they realize that if I want to be the person I want to be, if I'm gonna become the person I want to be, and you sort of get these things in. So yeah, no, thank you for that. I want to ask a question about courses. You have a thriving mastermind that has gone all over the world, and you have lots of students and mentees under you. What makes a good course? What should someone think about before buying a course? A lot of people say, someone like yourself, I don't know if it's true or not, but these people, they make more from their course than they do from the actual thing. What would you say to somebody that comes at somebody like you saying that, you're just saying these people a dream, everyone's going after the same assets now, lots of people want to buy companies, and sort of Dee's just taking their money for their course and then just, sort of letting them fight against each other. What would you say to someone that says that?
I think that just look at the people that have done it. Like for me, we try and post as many of our case studies online. I try and platform them as much as I can. So I'm just like, go and have a conversation with those people, because there's enough of them. Ask them their experience, what they like, what they didn't like. We're super transparent. Like, they can just ask them, because I think that there is a lot of like peer-to-peer education that's out there now. And I think it's a life hack in one way, but it also can put you in a bad place in another if you don't choose it. There's plenty of people out there, right? And there's going to be people out there that have M&A communities that people will resonate more than me. I think that most people have very similar information. It's just who you resonate with most. And there's going to be people that resonate with me, someone with somebody else, and that's in every industry. And I think that never jump into it very quickly. Take some time. To wait an extra month to do something that you really want to do. If it takes a month to go and do your own due diligence, go and speak to people, and go and do it. I think if you're going to make an investment in something, then you need to commit to it. You need to be obsessed with it, because you're making a commitment to yourself. Whatever you need to do due diligence wise to go and make that decision, I think people should take the time. And fortunately for us, it was an accident. I didn't even know what that. Now I know this is called info, right? Info. I didn't even know what that was. So I understand there's a whole process and to it now, right? But I just think that, look, the internet, everything you need to know is you can find out. So
interesting. No, I respect the answer, because people that do provide education and courses answer it in different ways. You haven't shied away from it. It makes you good money, and you've also helped a lot of people, right? But you've also been very clear that do your due diligence before you come work with me. There may be other people that suit you more than I do, but you haven't taken off the table that, courses are something that you shouldn't do or not everyone should do. I think it's very important in this day and age to not just go after the wealth of information that's out there in the world, but to follow the information and the people, because that is essentially how success is going to come, right? Some people have done it. There are many people that have done it, but go after the people that have done what you want to do and get around them. And I think there's always going to be a price for success, as you mentioned earlier. And I think in this day and age, it is one of them. right? You can pay in other ways. You can pay with mistakes. You can pay with more time. You can pay with money, but you are going to pay in some way, right? So I think it's fair. What's going on with Dealmaker? Because I know that was sort of meant to be sort of the right move of M&A in companies. I know you're sort of changing tact a little bit. So what's going on there?
So what we've done now is our lead generation arm and Dealmaker. We have started working with search funds in the US, running their whole acquisition strategy for them because they're not very good at deploying the capital. And we've basically brought Dealmaker and Logan Room into our 5D CP advisory, and everything's under one place now. So we work on the sell side if those deals come into Dealmaker, but we're now very picky, whereas we was working in tandem with some other brokerages that were on the same page as us. But the quality of fulfillment, once those intros are made, wasn't as good as we wanted it to be. So it's all come under an advisory arm now.
Okay. And a very quick fire round. So if you had zero today, no money, what's the first move you'd make in the next 24 hours to get into a deal?
Get into the right network of people as quick as you possibly can.
Okay. One red flag that makes you walk away instantly, even if the numbers look good.
This is not a very good quick fire. Probably like one single point of failure that you can't change.
Okay. Seller finance is a gift, leverage, or a trap?
Leverage.
Why?
Because you can reduce a lot of the risk in the deal. You can basically bring the seller to the table, and they have to have skin in the game as well.
Okay. What's the most common lie people tell themselves when buying a business?
Really depends on the deal, but I'll go on the mindset that I can't own this business because I've never owned a business before, most likely.
Okay. The fastest way to increase profit in the first 30 days is?
Pricing.
Pick one: cash flow, margins, or growth. What wins every time?
Again, I think it depends. I'm giving you some politician answers here, but I go for cash flow.
What is one boring industry that you'd look at that most people overlook?
Probably manufacturing.
Okay. What's the harsh truth about passive income that most people don't want to hear?
It's not passive.
And then finish the sentence. If you can't handle this, you shouldn't be in business.
Failure.
Okay. Dee Ludlow, thank you very much for your time. It's been honestly a very informative session, very inspiring. I think what you've been able to do from where you've come from and what you've built for yourself and for your family and for those around you is very rare, I think, to see in this day and age. And I think it's something I think for the UK you should be really proud of because you've done it globally, done it internationally. And so, yeah, I think from a success perspective, you're someone that is a real standout in terms of how you look at life and how you look at yourself. And yeah, thanks very much. I hope we can continue the conversation.
No, I appreciate it.